If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. Hello, welcome back. Speaking of healthy boundaries, if you would like a little support on your journey, go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com and download my free guide that will help make boundaries feel a lot easier and more loving. And I'll send you some really sweet love letters too. My guest today is someone I am deeply honored to have on my show. I was actually on her show last month. Her name is Erin Patten, and she is a dynamic keynote speaker, metaphysical master, and founder of the Meta Business World. Her transformative methodology fuses ancient metaphysical tools with innovative business strategies, and her proprietary meta business approach is designed to support exceptional women in thriving in today's corporate and entrepreneurial spaces. Erin's mission is to help women align their professional ambitions with inner peace and divine purpose, dissolving burnout and systemic dis-ease to lead with clarity, confidence, and conviction, all while cultivating spaces of deep healing, inclusivity, and equitable impact. In our discussion today, we take that metaphysical lens and apply it to self-care and relational health. Let's dive in. I've got Metaphysical Master Erin Patten with me today. I am so delighted to have you. Thank you for joining me.
I'm so happy to be here. I have been looking forward to this conversation since we had our chat on my podcast. So let's go.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, one of the things I'm particularly excited to talk about with you is one of my favorite sort of aspects of boundaries, and that's the energetic part, especially with the masculine, feminine, or yin and yang energies. And one of the explanations that I heard that really landed for me as like the best way to sort of view how they can best be in support of each other, and not just in relationships between two people, but those energies that we have both of within each of us. And that was that having your yang, and I prefer to use yang and yin just because masculine and feminine gets confused with genders. So having the yang energy build structures that support your yin in flowing in alignment with your values and goals is a really beautiful way to have them partner. And when you have that strong, stable containment, that's really when your creative yin energies are able to flow, and you can just, create your whole life in your most magnificent way. And of course, boundaries are a beautiful, wonderful masculine yang structure to support that type of flow. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I don't know if I could say it any more beautifully than you just said it, because I loved how you first clarified the masculine and the feminine, because one thing that people often do is associate masculine with man and feminine with woman. And although that is a thing, it's not the thing we're talking about right here. And I hope that people can really start to open or expand their view of this yin yang balance that's necessary for individuals, man and woman, to be able to operate more harmoniously with themselves first and then with others. And how that has played out in my life, thank you so much for asking, is let's just tell the truth here. It's just that there was no balance for much of my life. And particularly because so much of my childhood was trauma filled. It was, lots of just always, in my view, kind of attacks on our family. And, I'll just be frank with it. It's like at 5 years old, 6 years old, my sister was murdered. And then A few months after that, my father was sent to federal prison for prescription fraud charges in his doctor's office, and he was there for 7 years. And so my mom at that time entered into a mental hospital because obviously the pressure of it all was insane. So from a really young age, I really lacked those safe boundaries in my life because there was just so much trauma. And so growing up in that kind of environment, that inner child immediately retracts and immediately goes into hiding because it is just not safe to exist. And so much of my life was, particularly when I got to my 20s and early 30s, was around emotional suppression, not really being and living in my truth, a lot of the people pleasing that we've talked about before. And this is an incredible imbalance, if you will, of that yin yang energy. The feminine is really not able to flow, and the yang is way overactive because it's just trying to overcompensate for the lack of protection that I had in my youth. And particularly growing up in a very masculine, man dominated society, overly masculine society, we can use those words there. I always say I learned how to be a very good man, a very good toxic man, and being able to work really hard, punish myself when things went wrong, try to control everything around me and people around me. And those are recipes for disaster and, in my view, suicide, like just self-mutilation. And especially over time, people don't really see it as that, but you're slowly killing yourself. Operating from that kind of energy, any imbalance in that way just is death to the body. And it looks like disease. It looks like for me, I had severe IBS. I had severe anxiety. I was like on sleeping pills. On top of that, massive amounts of alcohol and drinking and party drugs on occasion. So it was just like my lifestyle was unsustainable. My life was unsustainable. However, this is actually normal for most people, this existence, especially living in New York City. And so at the time I was living in New York, I was working in the fashion industry. Of course, lots of, cares about image and perception and making other people like you, and so it just continued to exacerbate these behaviors. And I went to Harvard for grad school, went there for business school, I went to government school, got my degrees, my master's degrees in business and public policy, traveled all over the world, and continued to be rewarded, if you will, for this behavior. And by the time I graduated from Harvard, this is always why I say I went from Harvard to healing, is, I graduated in 2015, got my first job out of grad school in Detroit. And within a year and a half, my father unexpectedly passed away. One of my best friends was murdered. And then a few months later, my mom attempted suicide. So this was for me, it felt like a replay of my childhood, but in a way where I couldn't just dance and sing and run away from that and suppress it. I had to actually confront the real hard grief emotions that I was feeling in my body. And, that's when I like to say, like, my real education began, that real recognizing of this feminine, playful, loving, nurturing aspect of myself was crying out for attention, if you will. And that's when I started, practicing yoga, and I was practicing Tai Chi. And I actually, for the first time, felt the emotion of anger. I always like to say, like, I actually never expressed anger until I started my Tai Chi practice. And this is a very yin way of being, is this emotional expression, if you will, this allowing of emotions, whether it be anger, whether it be frustration, whether it be some of the nasty ones that we don't, the bitchy ones that we think that we're afraid to show. And especially being a Black woman, I was always very cognizant, if you will, or conscious about not being an angry Black woman, literally. So for most of my life, I tried to never be angry. I tried to never be a bitch. I tried to never disrupt anyone. I just was always nice and smiley because I didn't want to be an angry Black woman. So, which is really sad because I just allowed society's view of what women should be determine how I should be in many ways. And and so allowing of those emotions in many ways has taken years. Like I'm still in a space right now where I'm allowing for emotions to exist, and it's painful because emotions are energy in motion, and they're coursing through aspects of my being and meridians and that have never been accessed before. So it's painful because I feel them. If nothing else, I just feel it's a sensation, and that's really what the Tai Chi practice taught me was the awakening of the senses. And that's actually what it means to be a woman. That's actually what it means to be a man, is to feel and to sense. But so much of our conditioning has been shutting down that yin aspect that has that feeling and those emotions. So we don't feel, so we get comfortable with numbing. So being able to awaken those senses and being able to practice Tai Chi really allowed me to understand more of that yin yang flow. And of course, the practicing of an Eastern philosophy, an Eastern martial art, if you will, taught me this aspect of the yin yang flow. And so, a long winded way of bringing me to today and understanding and embodying more of the yin yang balance has essentially transformed my life. And so much of what I do today is anchored in the practice of being in feminine flow and guiding women in that and embracing more of that feminine flow, because so much of our lives, like as I shared before, may not have been as challenging per se, but certainly have over indexed for that yang aspect of ourselves, and bringing more of that yin just allows more ease and more love and more gentleness and more nurturing for ourselves and ultimately for the world.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful world is made possible by all of that. My goodness.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important to acknowledge for ourselves that it's not just about having the yin and yang in balance, it's also about having each of them in their like healthier forms. You know, we talk about
Yes.
toxic masculinity and toxic
Hmm.
femininity. Like, I
Hmm.
think part of the reason you get out of balance is because they're not really in their healed states. So,
Hmm.
what you described about your very traumatic upbringing, that was like so much yin that it was just chaos run
Hmm.
rampant. And
Hmm.
you didn't have enough
Structure.
healthy masculine, exactly yang structure energy to help you feel safe. And then what that translates into also is that you end up not even trusting yin or feminine energy
Hmm.
flow
Hmm.
at all. And so
Hmm.
then your masculine or yang gets sort of toxic and like
Hmm.
overprotective and over,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And then now your yin can't flow at all. And so, in order to start to let your yin flow more freely and abundantly and vibrantly, you have to heal that masculine so that your yang can support you in a healthy and supportive way.
Hmm. 100%. And that's what I love to talk about. And obviously, this is a beautiful space to do that because we do need that yang, that masculine, and also I want to kind of open it up more into like relationships, because I think this is sort of like the next iteration of my journey that I'm embarking upon. Is that now that I've become to master more of that balance within myself, then I know how to recognize a healthy masculine that can be my mate. And I know this is the issue that so many women have had challenges with, married or not, single or not. We've gone through relationships where, because of our own imbalance of our yin yang, our overgiving, our overdoing, our over expecting, believing lies, receiving lies, and in allowing it, enabling it, that we have attracted partners that have not served our highest good. And in many ways, they have, because they've accelerated awakening in us to move on and do better. And now, once we have that balance within ourselves as women, we can then attract men that them too embody more healthy masculine, more healthy yang flow, more healthy yin flow, where they can express their emotions. They can, express more than just anger,
Right.
which is great for men, and who can also hold healthy space for our expression and our being and accept us as we are and not judge us and try to control us or put us down or punish us.
Yeah.
And that was so much of my life up until now, was attracting men that did all those things and beyond.
Mm.
And so, and I'm still suffering the repercussions of it now with, having lost custody of my son, being in an ongoing custody battle. And not only have I just lost the custody, but I'm not even able to see him or talk to him. So it's one thing to not have the full custody. Okay, we share weekends, blah, blah, blah. But now I can't even see or talk to him. So now I'm being punished essentially because his dad doesn't like me. And so that kind of behavior obviously is toxic, and that kind of behavior obviously comes from also a place of pain. I don't really know the full extent of his dad's trauma, but instead of being able to have a healthy, normal, loving, maybe he may not like me, but respectful, let's say respectful conversation around co-parenting, I'm having to battle him in courts. And the court system is overrun with cases like mine or worse. And so that process takes forever. So this is why I haven't seen my son in nearly 2 months. And so,
Mm.
the trauma, I would say it continues, yet at the same time, I'm the trauma breaker. And because I'm not approaching this situation from a traumatic place, I'm approaching it now from a healed place, now that this trauma of particularly the situation with past relationships and with my son can actually have some resolutions instead of continuing for the rest of my son's life and then his kid's life, so it really has to stop somewhere. And that's why I really love the work that I do as a meta business millennial, because I believe just millennials in general as a generation are the trauma breakers, and we have the ability, thank God, to awaken, use our senses, utilize our emotions for good. Whereas I see like our parents' generations and generations prior us essentially didn't have the soul complexity to do that kind of work. They really were able to do the best that they could. Yet now we, as more advanced souls, can do higher and more complex work.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Hey friends, real quick, in case you're busy, which you probably are if you have a hard time with boundaries, I just wanted to make sure you know that you can go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com and download a free resource for making boundaries easier without sacrificing your compassion. Again, that's boundariesthatfeelgood.com. Okay, let's get back to the show.
And speaking of relationships, in addition to shifting what we need to shift in ourselves in order to attract people who are more aligned with our highest selves and our highest good, I have found for me and other women as well, that's like half of the equation. But the other half of the equation is not just what we attract, but what we're attracted to,
Mhm.
and learning to heal the blocks, like almost like blinders that we have that prevent us from even like seeing the men who are good for us. Like we
Mhm.
immediately discount them. And
Mhm.
one example is um, my pattern that is unfortunately fairly common is whatever environmental influences, family dynamics we grew up with, we end up sort of attached to this chasing love and never actually receiving it. So we think we want it. It's like chasing a carrot on a stick, you know? It's like we think we want it. We love going after it. We want it so bad, but we actually are not prepared to actually have it. So
Mhm.
it's the chasing. And so we will subconsciously find relationships where we get to chase it and feel like we're earning it because we're not worthy as we are. And therefore, if someone just wants to give us love, it's like that doesn't even feel like love. Like, what is that? You don't know me. This must be fake. I can't trust this. Like, this can't be real. You don't even like I haven't earned it. I have to earn it in order for it to be real. And so to heal that, to be able to actually accept love given freely, we have to not only shift our self-worth, but we almost have to like rewire our relationship with attraction as a thing and learning how to feel. So for me, and I find other women share this view too, I can feel safe with someone, like emotionally safe to be my authentic self, or I can be attracted to someone, but it's usually not the same thing. Like if I'm safe, it's because I'm not attracted to you. If I am attracted to you, by nothing of your fault. It's not that you're doing anything per se, but it's just once that attraction is there, now the risk is so high for me of you rejecting or not reciprocating that now I have to like put on a little bit of a mask or a show or something to like flirt or be cute or witty or whatever. Like there's this habitual pattern of like this inauthenticity because the fear of rejection is so deep. I've been doing a lot of work on it and I've come a long way, but I'm just like, I'm noticing, I'm paying a lot of attention to how I feel around all kinds of different men. Like what feels safe, what doesn't feel safe, what feels arousing, what doesn't feel arousing. And like, can I find a way? I'm like trying to find the way to feel both like, you know, excited, aroused, and safe simultaneously, because that's my friction point. Like figuring that out is the secret sauce I haven't landed yet.
Girl, let's talk about this because I am so glad you articulated it so well. I don't even know if many women are even aware of how you have just articulated this because these are all very great senses and very great awareness on your part. And I remember when I first worked with my mentors, Max and Jasmine, they are actually Divine Union partners and Divine Union mate mentors. I was talking to them about how I'm just so ready for my divine union partner. I'm just so ready to walk in purpose with him. And, you know, my mentor Max was questioning he's like, Erin, are you ready to receive love? I was like, yeah, I've been ready. Like, you know what I'm saying? However, my capacity, like if you can imagine almost just like a physical cup, maybe it was like, you know, like a 8 ounce, 10 ounce cup of ability to receive love. So like you said, so I'm attracted to people who can only give me the bare minimum. And as I then started to do this more healing work, this more expansive work, I've now been doing this for 3 years since I went to them calling for my divine mate. And going through also a series of dating in that time period and just even looking back at like, oh my God, like thank God have grown because my capacity to hold love has come from my capacity to love and care for myself. And that comes from the series of challenges that we go through. You've shared the many challenges that you've gone through very vulnerably and beautifully on my show. And I've been able to share as well a little bit to your audience here. And even now, especially what I'm going through with my son, cracking me open. What more can I do in this scenario? I have absolutely no control. Like, talk about surrender is the most feminine quality that there is. Like, to surrender and receive actually is the feminine quality. That's why we have the vagina. It's a receptor. We receive the penis. You know what I'm saying? We receive love. Women aren't designed to chase anything. We are the great attractors. And so to surrender in that capacity is almost like I feel like it's like an initiation to like the divine feminine in real life because I cannot do anything in this time of my life but love myself.
And
And
that's powerful.
that's powerful. And the more that we're able to show that love to ourselves, then the easier it is to get in front of men, no matter how wealthy, no matter how handsome, no matter how flirty, no matter how disrespectful they are. And I can hold my energy so strongly. I can be as demure as I want to be. And they are literally like throwing themselves, you know, like they're trying to do their best to just get my littlest, slightest attention because at the core, the man is wired to chase. The man is a hunter. He's a hunter gatherer. He wants to hunt down and he's gonna go the farthest mile to get his prize. Yet as women, we make it sometimes too easy. And I know that a lot of people say it like this way, and I never really quite understood it before either. But I remember even just holding my energy in intimacy. Like I was dating someone for a year before I even took it to an intimate level. This is at my late age. In my early age, damn near like first date, I would hook up with people. So, but that hookup culture, I feel like destroys the woman's ability to allow the man to chase. Like after that, what is he chasing? That's why it's a hookup culture because they're constantly wanting something new and fresh. And so I know this can be controversial in our world for women because we all grew up so feminist. However, I really suggest us in many ways, I don't want to say withholding, but being more aware of how we are allowing people into our intimate space, allowing
Discerning.
more discerning, and also just allowing more time. For
Yes.
me, it really helped to just not drink when I went on dates. You know, the man can drink all he want, but I would have my mocktail and be and that really allowed me to learn how to be safe being myself in front of a man. Because the alcohol makes it really easy to be flirty. It makes it really easy to allow for things that I may not have deeply wanted. And that was a trauma for me, especially as a young age. I felt like I was date raped way too often because I got too fucking drunk. And so I feel like as women, being able to hold our energy in front of men is a skill we have to practice. So what you're doing is beautiful practice for being aware, like, oh, I feel this sensation when I'm around this man. I feel like I laugh too hard or I get too weird. I feel, you know what I'm saying? Like, why am I acting like this? But those are really great questions to ask ourselves when we're around men because the man that we want will allow us to be our full selves, and we're belly laughing, we're farting, we're doing all the things that we do in front of our girlfriends because we're just being ourselves. Like we really can't do that without that deep love for ourselves. So I'm really grateful to have this kind of dialogue around this because I really would love for us women to start exploring more ways of how we can show up better for ourselves. And then because in many ways I'm always being reminded of this, women are the spiritual leaders in relationship.
Mm.
Yes, men do lead, but women are the spiritual leaders, like obviously the unseen, the yin, the
Mm-hmm.
energy. So how we behave is how the man will behave. So if we're holding our energy, if we're not allowing the sex, if we're not, silly drunk, if we're being kind, if we're wanting to communicate healthily, then the man follows that example. And have been experiencing that in my most recent dating life. And it's been such a breath of fresh air because I know that anything that happens in that relationship is not my fault.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Because I feel like sometimes, I feel like I'm always doing my best. I'm always showing up. Maybe that's not my fault. I will say that I'm doing my best. I
Mm-hmm.
showed up in my best. I showed up in my truth. And if they couldn't meet me, it wasn't meant to be.
Yes. Yes.
It's not about it being someone's fault
Yeah,
necessarily. It's more about it not being the right aligned relationship.
absolutely.
If it
I think
falls
that's
away,
so important because
yeah,
when when we know that we're doing our best to stay in alignment and in integrity, then that's what you're saying. Then like if something kind of falls apart, then you know that you did your best, you know that you stayed in alignment, and therefore what you're seeing, and this is the thing too, it's like it's not about blaming us or blaming them. It doesn't mean that
yes,
like, oh, it's their fault or they're the
yeah.
problem.
I didn't mean to use that word.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, it's great to highlight because we think in those terms all the time. And it's great when
Yeah,
you can catch that and be like, wait, that's not what I mean.
yeah,
Especially whenever it comes to things around personal responsibility. But
yeah,
noticing that we're in alignment, shit's falling apart, not blaming ourselves, not blaming them, and just recognizing that it's a mismatch. Like it's not the union, the connection is not an aligned one. And therefore you can just lovingly part ways and be like, hey, this doesn't really seem aligned. And like, I want what's best for both of us. And I think that trying to like force this or like, contort ourselves, one or both of us to stay together is going to be pulling one or both of us out of alignment. And that's just not going to be sustainable. So let's stay on our own paths of alignment, which appear to be divergent. And I'm going to go my way and you go your way. And I really sincerely wish you all the best.
Yes, and it's gonna be painful. Like it
Absolutely.
sounds so cute,
Yeah.
but it hurts so bad. And allowing that hurt, allowing that pain, and as you're doing that, no punishment of self. That's why I was saying it's not my fault. I'm not punishing myself for what I did wrong,
Yes.
punishing myself for anything because I know I showed up.
Yes.
And I know he showed up as best as he could, even if it sucked. You know what I'm saying? But that was actually the best he could do. And
Right.
that's another frame that I've started to um, accept or practice, particularly in relationship, is because it's not to demonize all the guys, because I think that's something that's really easy to be like, oh, he's a dickhead, he's a fuck boy, da 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 da. But in reality, like he genuinely liked you, like he did give you that energy, and that was just the best he could do. And so what we can do is just learn from him and know, okay, I love this about this guy. I love this about this guy. The next one's going to have all those qualities and more. And I guarantee you that's the true statement. And so we have to be able to allow that pain and allow and not to chase again, fall back into that behavior of chasing after him, texting him long messages and calling him late at night drunk, all whatever the bad things we used to do, the toxic things we used to do as young women. We don't do that anymore. We take that energy and we pour it back into ourselves because that's how we're going to attract that higher quality man, or else we're going to just be stuck in the same cycle.
Yes. And I think it's really important though, and I don't have the answer. And I've talked to a lot of people about this and there's not really a consensus. And I think it's one of those things where you just have to be attuned with yourself. But the challenge is figuring out when to work through shit versus when to part ways. Because I
That's a
think
great
that,
point.
right, like there's on the flip side, there is a tendency in our culture also this like disposability,
Throw it away.
right? Like, oh, yeah, you're not meeting every single one of my needs, I think, next, thanks. And it's like, I
Mhm.
mean, but maybe there's like a little bit of something that can happen. What I will say, I think the closest thing that I've come to in terms of like a framework or like a benchmark or like something to look for is as long as both partners are willing to practice personal responsibility and interpersonal accountability and show up for repairs. Like if you have that, it's probably worth working through whatever sort of conflicts or issues. But if that's not there, then it's probably not going to work out. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean whoever's having a hard time showing up for repairs is the problem. It could just be like maybe with a more aligned match, they would be able to. You know what I mean? Like I always just try and focus it on the connection rather than either of the individuals.
That is such a great point because I feel like, for example, I'm in a situation too where I call myself trying to throw it away because I just didn't think that it was going to work out. But then he showed back up. And most of the time, the guys do. And if they're showing up in integrity, to our point, are they showing up with communication, the desire to communicate, then that shows and demonstrates, okay, this is worth working towards. However, if you're getting the ghosting energy, if you're finding yourself constantly in that chasing role trying to repair, then that's how you can know. However, if people are really, like you said, with the proper intentions doing it, absolutely, I 100% agree with that.
I think, you know what, I'm going to add another little caveat to that to
Mhm.
extend it and say that like growth has to actually also be happening because it's one thing to show up with all of the apologies and repair, but then like the pattern never changes.
Yeah,
Like I think it's important to to have our boundaries. Boundaries is kind of a broad case umbrella. It covers sort of a number of different things, but standards can kind of fall within that. And so you can have sort of a boundary around, how much conflict or like how many or what type of conflict that, you're willing to kind of deal with. And I think it's important to have some sort of allowance for a bit of a learning curve.
Yes.
And then also it's a good idea to have another boundary around how many times. Like,
I agree.
right? So you can say like, okay, if I have to repeat my boundary a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
I'll make an allowance for that because the person's still learning me and they're making an effort to learn. But if it's like 4 or 5, 10 times and it's like not changing, then that's where I have a boundary around that. Like how many repetitions, how long does it take for the learning to happen, right?
Mhm. I would say though, for that, really start to use your feelings and emotions too as a compass, because I feel like the 4, 5, 10, who knows who needs the growth? Because I feel like there's some times where the other person, but is it me too? And I feel like I was saying before, I had a tendency to demonize the other person when in reality, sometimes it was me that wasn't communicating properly, or
Yes.
me that could have done something a little bit differently, and I did it because I was I was just being the asshole. I don't know how else to say it. Or I was just feeling not rather than being an asshole, I was just hurt and not comfortable expressing my pain. Let me
Yeah.
put it that way.
Yeah.
That's actually the more accurate way.
Yeah.
Because and the way I knew how and the best way I knew how to do that was silent treatment, cold
Yeah.
shoulder. And that's not a healthy way to deal with issues either. So that's why it is a case by case, a feeling by feeling scenario. And you can put hard numbers to it. And I would just also suggest going with the feeling, because in that scenario, particularly for me, I had to feel into, wow, like I'm demonizing this person and I'm giving the cold shoulder because I'm hurt and I don't know how to communicate and this is happening and I haven't been vocal about this.
Right.
And so that was some growth that I needed to before we could even come back together as a couple to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So there's just so much nuance and variance in the relationships. But the key, like to our point, is to have that knowing of self. I think that's where you're going to go back to, like what I was saying, and being able to listen to yourself and love on yourself so you can hear that inner girl that had been shut down for all these decades, whisper, I just wanted him to call me back. But I didn't tell him that because when he didn't call me back, I just stopped answering his calls
Right. Yeah.
because he hurt me so bad because he didn't call me back that one time.
That one time.
Yes.
I
So,
can't tell you how many times there have been so many instances where I will communicate something once and then like the problem will persist and I'll be like, I told him once. Like we do not learn, it's not one and done. We have to learn through repetition. And that's what I mean about
yes,
having some sort of allowance for that,
yes,
but
yes,
also having that sort of discernment where like, okay, well, at what point does it become a little inexcusable? Of course, check in, like, am I really communicating effectively and
yes,
responsibly too? Like,
yes,
one of the biggest problems I have with clients that come to me struggling with boundaries is they'll say like, I'm communicating my boundaries, but they're not respecting them. I'm like, it's not their job. You communicating about your boundary is like a gift of information. FYI, this is what happens and this is what I'm going to do. Boundaries are what you are going to do to take care of you.
hmm,
Needs, on the other hand, needs are a separate sort of conversation. Like if you need something from someone, you're going to make a request. You're not going to make a demand. Like that's not going to go well. That's going to backfire hardcore.
that
So
part.
if you have something that you are needing from them, then you communicate with ownership, like, hey, this is what I need. Here's some ways that you could help me meet this need. And what do you need? What in this same situation? Like, how can we get creative and collaborative to find a solution where both of our needs can get met?
And you know how hard that is?
Mhm.
Sometimes it requires distance to get to that place. Like this is what I literally just did this with someone I'm dating. It took us a month to have this conversation, a month of literally no communication because I was so hurt by not being called back, you guys, that I could not have a healthy conversation without projecting my pain. And this is the work. As women, we really have to, in many ways, heal that rejection from all the years prior. But so we are not projecting our rejection through the lifetimes of rejection energy that we have in our being on this person for the one time they didn't show up the way we wanted them to. And that's essentially kind of where we are as a collective, is just that we're so hurt that to have conversations about our pain can sometimes exacerbate the pain. So
Yeah,
it's really, really important that we work on nurturing ourselves and healing ourselves as best as we can before we have those needs conversations, so we're not continuing to operate in the pain.
absolutely. And I think that something that can really help with that too is, we've mentioned the inner child a few times and, formative years, how we are traumatized and how that shapes us. And so reparenting is a big part of the work.
Yeah.
And through that and some other things, that coaches can support with or other sorts of healing modalities. But to me, I think what's really important is learning to root your security within,
Yeah.
because through that process and the reparenting, you start to demonstrate, prove to yourself that you've got your back. And I find that that is what really helps me do the scary things, because usually the biggest fear, at least for me and a lot of like recovering people pleasers, probably a lot of other issues people are working through, it comes down to a fear of rejection. We're social creatures and we're still wired from the vast majority of our evolutionary history that being rejected meant being left to die alone in the cold. And so like
Yeah.
it's a really primal fear that I think is worth acknowledging and having some compassion for. But
Yes.
learning that we can be there for ourselves and remembering that we're not limited to a little tribe. We do have like a giant global, community, society these days, right? Like we're probably not going to die alone in the cold. We've got support systems in place, but also remembering that we've got our own backs. And that way, when you're like, oh my God, I'm so scared to say this, then it's like, okay, if they leave, I will be okay. But they probably
Yeah.
won't. But like you still have
Yeah.
to be able to know that you're going to be okay, even if they get upset or reject you or judge you or shame you or leave you. And
Yeah.
then the most important thing to do is not necessarily be so healed that you're not projecting, but at least,
Yeah.
right? But at least be like grounded and in your safety enough to say, hey, I'm projecting right now. Like I'm feeling all of my past rejections and pains coming up right now. And this is like, I'm having some hurt that's disproportionate to the thing that you did. And I don't want to put all of that on you, but I also want you to know that I'm really hurting. And it's me. I'm owning this. I'm not blaming you, but it's sort of a cause and effect thing. Like this is the thing that happened that you did. And this is how I'm reacting from my history. And honestly, I'm going to need some time. Like, I need to take some space because I'm dealing with my own shit that came up in this interaction, or lack of interaction for that matter. Um,
Yes. This is good.
and the power of bringing that sort of vulnerability to the connection, to the dynamic is like, it's almost impossible to receive vulnerability without feeling vulnerable. Does that make sense? Like when
Mhm.
someone shares something really deep and raw and vulnerable with you, it's disarming.
Mhm.
And that's why I also say it's really important when you're talking about that kind of stuff with people to use emotion words. Anytime you say, I feel like, what's coming after that is an interpretation that the other person's probably going to get defensive about. I feel like
Mhm.
you're ignoring me. I'm not ignoring you. But if you say, I feel hurt, you can't argue with that. Like I
Mhm.
feel hurt. And I'm like, okay, no one's gonna argue with that. So that level of sort of it's like a bedrock type of foundational, unassailable vulnerability to just say what you're feeling. And like, I'm having these things come up. I'm having these feelings and these memories and this experience.
Mhm.
This is where I'm at. And I'm just sharing that with you. You don't need to do anything about it. What I
Mhm.
need to do about it is XYZ.
Mhm.
And I just want you to know what I'm going through.
So true. So good.
And so hard, so very hard.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think that boundaries are a really, really helpful support for this because it's not just about learning how to say no. It's about reconnecting to your yes so that your no can be in service of that. And that's bringing that back to the yang and yin. Your boundaries are the structures that support your yin. And therefore, it's the same as saying like your no's support your yes. And so when you're like, I know that I need to feel safe, I know that I need to be well, I know that I want to feel resourced so that I have enough to show up, in the way that I really want to for the people and causes that matter the most to me. Anything that's like gonna disrupt that is a no, but it can be a very gentle, compassionate no, like, hey, no, that's not aligned for me. I'm not available for that. But I love you. Thank you. I wish you well. Doesn't have to be harsh, but it can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for this conversation. I hope we have more, and you have your own show that I've already guested on. Tell us
Yes.
more about that. And I know you've got a program as well. If any of our listeners want to follow up with you, where can they go?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as Mariya mentioned, she was on my show for the Meta Business Millennial podcast. It's a podcast dedicated to women entrepreneurs who are navigating the world of work, our careers, our family lives, our caregiving, our motherhood, and wanting to do so more in feminine flow with this yin energy and without the masculine hustle, the yang over index. We just talked about that. So that's really sort of the what the show's ethos is. And also a lot of my work is centered around that as well. And I have my program, the Soulful Accelerator, that is really inspired by the tech days of accelerating companies and creating unicorns. And unicorns aren't fed with dollars, unicorns are fed with love. And so essentially, the Soulful Accelerator teaches and guides women entrepreneurs through creating more soul aligned, love filled, purpose filled enterprises, ventures, for lack of better words, businesses that are creating beautiful impact in the world and are also serving the beautiful missions of the women who founded them. So that's what the Soulful Accelerator is about. It's a 7-week program, evergreen program. So certainly check out the website, erinpatten.com, to learn more about my offerings.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, for anyone listening, by the way, if you resonate with anything we talked about, if you have shared experiences in relationships or your own upbringing or your own sort of toxic patterns that you're trying to heal from and work through, like just drop a comment, share the love, because oftentimes we feel like we're the only ones going through what we're going through, and that's pretty much never true. So
Yeah.
drop a comment in the chat so that we all get to feel a little bit less alone in our challenging but also rewarding journeys.
Yes. I love that. So
Awesome.
true.
Well, thank you again, Erin. It has been such a delight, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.
Again, if you would like to learn more about Erin and what she offers, you can find her links in the show notes. If you would like some help specifically around boundaries, making them easier, more loving, go to explorelovingboundaries.com to grab a spot on my calendar for a free call. No charge, no strings, just validation and support. Or you can also just go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com and download my free guide. Whatever you do, don't wait too long though, because everything in your life will be enhanced by you being more resourced. And if you do nothing else, make sure you are subscribed to this podcast. And of course, feel free to share it with anyone else you think might enjoy it. Wherever you're at on your journey, I send you love and courage. Namaste.